Hey there, Brian. Hey, it's Wayne, and here are the swings that we filmed the other day. So let's watch them regular speed and then in slow motion a little bit. So you always have very nice rhythm and very nice motion. So we're trying to figure out what we could do. I wonder if yeah, so face on I only had the regular speed. The one I did in slow-mo was just in the downswing, but that's probably good enough. Anyway, all right. So let's say that having to work all day, you don't really have time to redo your backswing, which you don't really need to. So our goal is to see what we can do from right here, which is comfortable, and avoid the couple of things that we were talking about. So two things I see: the hips are a little slow to clear. You were talking about the way your arm was releasing, how your left arm looked like it was moving out away from you, and the release was out to the right a little bit. So the thing I was explaining was I think that's because the club is flattening late and the lower body is slow to clear. So I wanted to get a thought that would combine getting the right arm in a better, stronger approach position along with clearing the hips faster. So this is pretty standard. I mean, it's fine. You're loading a little bit right with the upper. That's good. Your hips are solid. They're in the box. You're like me. This is about the amount of extension you can get in your swing, but that's fine. You're a big guy. You can hit it far from here. Right? So there's really no problem there. And when we look at it from down the line, having the club out in front of you and a little vertical is another pattern that you see quite a bit. So the question now is, if we don't try to fiddle with this, what's the best way to get from here to hit the ball? Let's see what happens. So a couple things that I'm always interested in transition is, where does the grip end go? So what's the path of the end of the butt of the club, right? And as we watch, you can see it drop down. So when the grip moves behind you like that, then you know that this arm structure up here is also going to shift more downward and less outward, and thus the upper arm is not going to be externally rotating and supinating and driving down and forward as much this way. So it's not in that sidearm motion feeling where the shaft would immediately from here, when you start down, it would kick over this way even harder. So it wouldn't go up as much. It would go more sideways early. So by the time, let's say by the time your hands dropped, that far, that shaft could be over here where it would be flatter than the plane. So right now you're actually a little steep of the plane, and then it begins to flatten late. right? Now the other thing that's interesting is that the movement here, if it's falling behind you, then the kind of the motion pattern becomes this. So what that means is if the hands go back behind you, the lower body has a tendency to want to shoot out to the right, and the head wants to back up. So now the club, when it's flattening late and you have that pattern going, now you see a problem here with the lower body. So by the time the left leg clears, the shaft is all the way down at parallel to the ground. So that means by the time you hit this ball, your hips are going to be not all that open. So when the club is coming in, flattening behind your hands, and your legs are slow, you're going to release it out to the right, because you can't really, at that point, get your arms to move around. Your body's not moving around enough. Now the good news, if we watch the way the hips are moving here, is that you gain depth in the backswing, which is really good. And in the forward swing, you're really not, like most people are, shooting up to the right. So my thought was, in transition, if you thought of taking the upper right arm from here and moving it more where the grip end would go either toward the ball or even above it, out with your left arm, and we get the shaft to kick back harder rather than dropping behind you, your right arm then your forearm could drive, or what we call adduct, down and forward, or the elbow would feel like it was leading the motion, and the shaft would, instead of doing what it's doing here, would kick sideways much harder. And what you would be thinking mentally is, if I can take this elbow in that area there and this area here, right, and let's combine the thought. So as I move this way, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to go back. Now, one of the real important things here when you do that is that you feel like you stay bent into the shot. So we don't want to pull away. You want to stay over it as best you can. So kind of the poster child for this kind of an action, even though it's not, yours is not going to be nearly as exaggerated because your backswing is much more conventional. But if you look at this kid here, so the action we're talking about is that. So you can see his forearms way up here. Now, I'm not advocating this backswing, but this is a forearm that's tipping more vertically. So the arm is driving down and in from up here. And look what the shaft does. It kicks early so that as it gets into here, now you can turn it down. So you see the left wrist over here very flat, bent down, right? So see the way that wrist looks like bowed? Well, that's that, and the rotation there is driving him into the ball. That's kind of what the release would be. It'd be nice to be able to get the arms to release like that instead of out to the right. Alright, so same backswing, Then we want to make sure we stay bent over and open up and drive that right arm down and forward with the grip moving toward the ball and the club head laying back. All right.